All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special work session of the Brighton Area Schools Board of Education. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Ms. Ackermite, roll call, please.
Mrs. Urbane, present. Mr. Storm, present. Mrs. Tierney, here. Mr. Stahl, here. Dr. Krebs, here. Mrs. Mark, here. Mr. Meyer.
Here. All right, that moves us to the approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Moved by Ms. Tierney. Supported by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. That moves us to the call to the public. If there's anyone here that would like to address the board, this is your opportunity to do so. You will have 3 minutes. Mr. Stahl will be keeping track of time. We ask that you fill out a card in the rear of the room and drop it in the box to the left of Mr. Jones. And when I call your name, you will have 3 minutes to address the board.
There are no cards.
No cards? All right, seeing none, that closes the call to the public and moves us to the for action portion of our agenda. Item A, Human Resources Report, Mr. Anastasoff.
All right, and Dr. Outlaw, do you want to start us with the one before we go into the teachers?
You want to give an overview, and then I can just talk about our new assistant superintendent?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, and so on the agenda today, we do have a few more teachers, and we do have Carly Evans as well as the new hire for the director and virtual learning coordinator of the Bridge. And then we have 4 other teachers on here. As you can see, we are keeping track of the vacancies as well. So if you go to the bottom, it does still leave us with 3 BEA teachers and 1.5, I guess, FTE of the Bridge teachers as well, along with the assistant superintendent of finance. So again, continue to be in a good position. Administration has continue to do an excellent job at throughout the process and finding excellent candidates.
And then I just want to highlight the assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction candidate that we are presenting to you tonight. We had an exhaustive process. We had the benefit of having Mrs. Marks, Tierney, and Dr. Krebs that were all part of this process. We screened a number of candidates our first round, and then we went a little bit deeper and we employed the assistance of Michigan Leadership Institute, and we had some additional candidates in there, and we interviewed 4 outstanding candidates earlier this week. And from that, we narrowed that list, and I'm super excited to be presenting Josh Satterfield to be our next assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction. He's currently assistant superintendent for curriculum in the Woodhaven Brownstown district, full of energy, just outstanding young educator, very talented, great experience, and wonder if you all have any comments from what you saw. No, from the people that were on the committee, I was saying, and then.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this position. I think he really will be a great addition to the team.
I would agree, and one of the things that we've talked about a lot in the academic committee meeting and then in separate groups is being very conscious of knowing we're hiring someone with fantastic data-driven results, and that completely checks out with this particular candidate. So that's really important to me. There was growth across the district in all areas, and I think he's going to bring some really fantastic forward movement for us.
All right. So do we have a motion to approve the Human Resources Report as presented? Moved by Dr. Krebs. Supported by Ms. Marks. All right, any discussion?
I just want to make a comment that upon reviewing his resume and talking with Mrs. Krebs and Mrs. Marks, I did find that Woodhaven Brownstown is one of the models for implementing the Science of Reading Letters training that the state is promoting. So they are one of the 3 implementation models, which definitely checks a box for me. So I appreciate that and look forward to meeting him.
Mr.
Say
Storm?
he actually, oh, I'm sorry. He was just saying he did actually get invited to Lansing for specifically like letters as that model, so we're excited to have that aspect of it.
Jake, I have just a general question regarding the HR report and a process related to some of the items that are on our HR report in
Yeah.
the regular updates you provide. One of the items that you often share with us for good reason, and we're grateful for that, is retirements. And since our last meeting, I had received an email from the the president of the Brighton Chamber of Commerce, who's a former teacher. The whole board received an email from Karen Story. So she's a former teacher of Brighton area schools and is currently the head of the chamber here in our community. And she had expressed concern to us about how our district recognizes retirees of the district. So tenured employees who've been, given decades of their life, in some instances 3 decades, to our district. And it's my understanding from the communication, again, that was shared with the whole board, that if a district employee retires mid-year, and I'd like to also go on record and just say I am actually very supportive of the district's efforts to encourage teachers to retire at the end of the calendar year, the student year, so that way they can complete their year, if you will, the retirement year, without interrupting instruction in a classroom. I completely, understand and appreciate the district's position on that. But I also do feel very strongly that if a employee, a teacher, or a member of this district, employee of the district, makes a decision to retire before the end of the school year, I guess is a better way to phrase it, that it seems that our district would want to include those employees in the retirement celebrations that are held and allow them to participate in the totality of the retirement celebration that are held for the teachers who've served that full school year. And I guess I'm just asking for clarification from a district perspective, why are teachers not being included and given the opportunity to be part of those retirement celebrations when they serve this district and for some reason are being left out? And I'm just, what's the reason for that?
I mean, so you're referring to the, our annual, retirement ceremony that we have in June. So we've been doing it we had our 3rd year, this year with it. Yeah, so when looking at the retirements to, our retirees to, invite, when we did start it, we do, as you said, invite those who are, retiring with the completion of their contract at that point, like whether it's at the end of the school year or June 30th, whatever that may be, even though we do have retirees, both from the support staff, teaching staff that retire throughout. They're still, I know, recognized by their association. We still obviously interact with them with that, but as far as the retirement celebration, we did have some that did not receive an invite. And over the last 3 years, we've made some modifications to that because it is a newer celebration for that. So that's, obviously a aspect that we can consider moving forward.
So I guess just from a district perspective, why would we not include all the retirees in the retirement celebration that's held? Like, why does the district, it appears to me as a board member that the district penalizes a employee who serves this district in good standing, who for personal reasons decides to retire at the midpoint of a school year or whenever. That's their decision, not ours or the district's. Why is the district penalizing those people from being able to participate in a retirement celebration with their peers and with others in the community who are involved in the celebration? Like, why would we ever do that? What's the reason for that?
I don't have a particular reason. The goal is not to penalize, like I said, as you said. I know when we look at it, because we do have, like I said, if you combine all the staff, we have some that may retire later in June or in July or August or September and on those type of times. And so when we do send the invites out, there's still current staff members at that time when we send those out. So we haven't included those who have retired previous to that from any of the areas, but I'm happy to talk with the committee that sets that up and have that conversation.
So there's a committee that makes that decision? That's
I say committee, it's more just like my office is just in communication with, STAR and different stuff like
The district
that.
is responsible then for inviting a teacher. So say a teacher retires midpoint of the school year. Who is the individual in the district who is responsible for actually extending an invitation?
It's our office that sends the invitations
So you and
out to the individuals.
You
Yeah,
and
the
your
HR
staff?
office sends them out.
So you and your staff?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
good. And so are you getting direction from anywhere else not to send an invitation to a teacher?
I mean, when we first established the celebration, we established it with that understanding that those would be the individuals getting the invites, and so we moved forward with that,
The
with that
individuals
idea.
that, just so I understand what's the individuals that who?
That would get the invites. We established the criteria of having them finish out their contract
Okay,
at
so
that
this-
time.
the
So,
teachers who
let
finish
Andy,
this-
just,
Yeah.
so, I mean,
I don't know
I think we got the
board
point.
feels on this, but
Well, after the email that was sent to everybody,
Yeah.
I've talked to Dr. Outlaw,
Okay.
and we've had communication about needing to figure out a way to address, I mean, as Mr. Annis
Do you
talks of.
share the sentiment
Yeah,
that we as a
I think
district
that
wanna-
there's, we need to figure out a way to recognize, whenever the former employees, and it's not just teachers, there's administrators that retired mid-year that weren't included in the past.
agreed.
And Dr. Outlaw and I talked about that, and it's my position that whether it's that particular ceremony or something, a mid-year, whatever, to just, come up with a way to recognize the contributions and of the service of those former employees.
I'd be interested,
So-
just from other members of the board, would anyone be opposed at just essentially from our perspective as board members, giving the administration direction to say, please include any teachers or any, like you said, Roger, any members of the administrative staff who retire during a school year, when that retirement celebration is set up? To me, a simple solution, I'd be super happy, is to just extend the invitation to those who retire during the school year, like the full school year, whether they retire in September, or whether they retire in January, or whether they retire at the end of the school year. We as a district, I would hope, would want to extend an invitation to those people and let them participate in that retirement celebration that's held to celebrate those who are retiring. And I guess if others feel differently, I'd welcome your input.
Well, I don't feel differently, other than, I don't know that, I mean, so if people retire mid-year, sometimes they're moving, right? They may not even be around when
Yeah,
that.
I agree.
So
But
my
the
point
invitation
is,
gets
my
extended,
point
right?
is that to come up with something that gives the opportunity to recognize those individuals, whether it's, I mean, this is a ceremony that was started 3 years ago. And I agree,
nice.
that's, yeah, absolutely. So whether it's that ceremony or coming up with something else, I think that's what, the administration can talk about. I think they should come back and make a suggestion as to what we can do.
Is
So
anyone
it's-
opposed to extending an invitation for them to participate in that singular event that's held at the end of the school year? Is anyone opposed to that?
No, I think it's understandable if somebody leaves early just because they're done, and they don't finish their year. I understand why there might be an issue with that, because that can be very costly to
Yep.
get someone to
I
cover
agree.
those positions. But then again, yes, they've still been here, what, a year or two shy of finishing it, and everybody has a different reason for it. So I don't,
Shouldn't
I
be
don't
punitive, right?
disagree.
We shouldn't be punitive. over-
Well, I don't know that that's punitive. It's just the way that the process evolved. I mean, it's certainly, we can figure out a way to recognize those people. And they are recognized in other formats within the organization. That particular ceremony, they weren't invited to. I agree, we need to do something to recognize their accomplishments. I completely agree with that.
Awesome. Is
So, it's just-
anybody opposed to extending the invitation to them? Is anybody opposed to that? Just so Jake can kind of get direction from us. Is anyone opposed to it?
I agree with your sentiment. I mean, I think they're working on it. I think.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I mean,
don't
this
know that
is,
we need to tell them to do something.
Right.
I think the idea is that they're working on it.
I mean, is this like something that requires a lot of
I
analysis and
don't think
debate?
so. I think
I don't either.
it's already spent too much time on it.
Okay, so you do support then extending
I
the
think
invitation?
I support them working on what they're gonna do. I don't, Roger and they've been in communications, they're working on something. I don't think we come in and tell them to do something different.
To extend an invitation to retirees?
I don't know what they're gonna do. I don't know. They're working on something. I'm
Okay.
gonna listen to what they have to say.
Anyone else have any thoughts, comments? Mr. Bean, you're not usually short for words.
yeah. All right, any further discussion with regard to the approval of the Human Resources Report? All right, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. and I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of the new hires that we just approved this evening. We look forward to great things with you joining the district. We welcome your talents. I know the feedback that we've received from all of the applicants that it was a very deep pool of very talented individuals. It speaks volumes regarding the attractiveness of this district and how well this district is doing to attract that kind of talent. And we're thrilled that we're able to hire these very talented people that will make a tangible, significant impact in a positive direction on this district. So that concludes the for action portion, and that moves us to the next item, work session election timing. So one of the things that as we've talked about before, at both the board table and I know in different committees, is having a group discussion about sort of conceptually, at least initially, whether we want to go back out for a potential new bond or a sinking fund, the timing of that, whether that's this coming fall, whether it's next year, whether it's 2028. Obviously, if the consensus is that we are not going to go forward with any form of a bond or a sinking fund, then, in 2026, then, there's no sense of urgency to have the district begin, conducting due diligence as to what that might look like, looking at the timing, because obviously we'll be bumping up against some deadlines if we are going to go forward for 2026. So, really the question is, are we going to go forward conceptually? Are we interested in going forward with a potential bond or sinking fund in the fall of 2026? Because if we are, the purpose of tonight is to just give the administration the green light to start doing the due diligence of what that might look like. We would have to approve that in August, and we'll have to have, obviously, either in committee meetings, potentially in further work sessions, have a further dialogue on what the scope of that either bond might be or the scope of a sinking fund might be. That would then be decided at, I think the August meeting is the time frame that we would have to make that decision. If, on the other hand, the consensus of the board, or the majority of the board tonight, is that we have no desire to go forward in any capacity in 2026, then we don't need the administration to begin in earnest conducting due diligence and start looking at what that potentially could entail, and there's really nothing further for us to do at this juncture, and we just move on and then wait until 2027 and revisit the issue at that point in time, or 2028, depending on what the assessment of the board at that time will be. So we're not here to talk about a scope of anything, projects, costs. We're really here and obviously there's some preliminary information that has been shared in terms of looking at, the current millage rate, future millage rates, what type of potential amount could be generated if we were to go forward with a bond, for example, in the fall of 2026. So there certainly is some basic information, and so anyway, that's really what we wanted to talk about, because if there is an interest on the part of the majority of the board to go forward with something, then we need to turn the administration loose on doing due diligence immediately. I will add that with regard to this overall discussion, that the feedback that, and I think it has been shared in the communications from the administration, that given the timing of kind of where things landed after the May election and the timing of the process that's required to be followed from a legal standpoint, if we were going to go forward with a bond in the November 2026 election, there's no legal ability to go forward with a state bond, a bond, through the state, a conforming bond through leveraging the state's bond rating. The timing is just, we would have had to have made a decision on the entirety of what that bond would look like and submit it to the state, I believe by next week, frankly, I think would have been the deadline. So if we are going to go forward with the bond in the fall of 2026, it would have to be on the non-qualified basis, which is no different from a legal standpoint as far as the projects that would have to be completed if in fact the bond was approved as it relates to a qualified application. So that part of it is no different. The difference
prior
is,
non-qualified?
pardon me,
The prior was non-qualified.
the one we just did was non-qualified.
I'm super familiar with
Yeah.
the qualified process.
So, that would be the only route at this point that we could go if we were going to go forward with the November 2026. So that sort of introduces the topic.
I feel on.
How do you want to like facilitate
Well,
the conversation, Roger, just so we're not like talking?
Yeah, I think it would just be good, I mean, obviously, everyone's had an opportunity to look at the information that's been shared by the administration. There's been conversations here at the board table, there's been conversations in committee meetings, so I'm fully confident that, what I would suggest is just kind of open it up, let everyone have an opportunity to share their thoughts, individually.
You mentioned due diligence a few times, just for the benefit of the public. What due diligence does the district need to perform? You mentioned like the board giving the administration the green light to perform due diligence. What do you mean by that?
Well, so for example, if they were looking at a bond that, for example, kept the millage rate flat, so in 2027, the current rate, the rate in 2027 would be 2.73. And then it drops off incrementally in future years, just as it's done in the past years. At a much slower rate than, I mean, we've had very precipitous drop-offs in the past 2 or 3 years. The drop-off in future years is not as precipitous, it's much less incremental. But for example, Baker Tilly has done an analysis of, if hypothetically we were to go forward with a bond, and the bond would keep the rate at the 2.73 for however many years in the future, as opposed to the incremental drop-off, that gap, that the difference between keeping it flat at 2.73 versus the delta with what it would be otherwise if it continued to drop off, and my understanding is that would generate the ability for the district to go out to the voters for a bond of approximately $90 million. Is that correct? So Baker Tilly they've done that analysis. Now, that doesn't mean that you'd have to go out for $90 million. I mean, if you go out for something less than that, it would still be capped at that same amount. It just, down the road, it might start dropping off a little faster than if you did the full 90. That's how that would, from a financial analysis standpoint, that's what that would look like. The due diligence that I think the district would have to do would be obviously, we did an extensive amount of investigation over the past 2 years, surveys, meetings, soliciting feedback from security consultants, other consultants, and we came up with a scope which was not approved by the voters. I mean, to me, it doesn't make sense to now go out and try to come up with a new list. I mean, I think we still work within, we've already identified what the broader scope of what the community feedback was. And I think my suggestion would be that we work within that scope but obviously looking at a much smaller scale, deciding what we as a board should prioritize. I mean, obviously, we've received feedback from the community after the bond vote as to why individuals may not have supported the bond, what might be different that they would support. And so I think what part of that due diligence is looking at it and saying, okay, this is, to the extent that the community members did not support it, but would consider supporting something, that's what we need to really try to focus on, right? And so we need to focus on that. We need to focus on having the administration come up with revised projections as far as, I mean, I don't know if there's been any, changing. I mean, obviously, fuel prices have changed since the last cost estimates were done, so there's probably going to be some fluctuation in pricing on projects, with variables like fuel costs. So what we would, I think, in my opinion, the district administration would need to do is to then look at the scope of what was previously on the bond that was rejected, and hone in on then the projects that there, you know, seem to be a priority, not only from the board's perspective, because remember, as we went through this, there were a fairly significant amount of projects that we all right away said, yeah, these are definite ones. And then there were some that were on the fringe that we debated, should this stay on, should this not stay on? And, you know, and so I think those are the ones that are probably gonna be the ones that end up not making the cut, because even at the beginning, while we felt that they were important enough to put on the bond, in the ranking of priority, they were certainly at a lower level. And so I think that the district needs to engage to have a renewed analysis of the projects that were more prioritized as we went through the previous round, secure updated cost estimates, and then come back to us, and we can have a meeting, and we can say, okay, here's a list of whatever, I think there was 150 projects in the last, give or take, in the last bond. Here's a list of 100 projects, or 85 projects, or whatever it may be. Here's the associated cost. You know, to altogether, you know, maybe that's those 100 projects are, you know, 110 million. We're not gonna go out for, you know, 100, if the consensus is we're gonna try to keep it flat, we're not gonna go out at 110 million. We're gonna go out at something at 90 million or less, and then we can then, as a group, hone in on, okay, we've got 6 members that we don't want these 6 items. So that eliminates, you know, 15 million of what was on that list. And now we need to identify of the remaining, you know, here's a list of 10 projects that comprise $10 million. You know, I'm just making up numbers, obviously. And then we need to then, again, further vet whether that's something in conjunction with the feedback from the administration, that's, you know, where we may land. So that's how I see the due diligence unfolding. And I think.
Just to play back, because I don't want to interrupt you.
That's okay.
If I'm interpreting what you're communicating correctly, we as a board would authorize the district to engage consultants, third parties, to evaluate and assess the existing list of projects and evaluate if the price, cost, with the involved folks that have been involved up until now, to evaluate and assess the cost of the existing projects on the list, if those costs have changed, or do we as a board first establish what we believe are critically important projects to the district, and then have the administration engage the appropriate parties to then evaluate, assess what would those cost, and then from that data set, make an informed decision on what stays and what goes.
Well, when you say engage, it's not gonna cost the district anything, so it's not gonna cost the district to have that analysis done. And I think from a timing standpoint.
Why do you feel that way?
Because they've already said that, that's part of the deal. I mean, Clark is not going to, we're not gonna be charged anything to have new cost estimates prepared.
Okay.
And so from a timing standpoint, to me, given that fact, I'd agree with you. I mean, if it was gonna cost the district 50 grand or 70 or something to go out and have that cost estimation done, then I might agree with you from a sequencing standpoint. But I think, given the timing, the problem is if we say, don't do anything, and then we, you know, schedule a meeting, I mean, it's the end of June right now, right? So we try to find a time to meet we have a regular meeting scheduled July 10th, but to then have a meeting where we talk about all, you know, the potential projects, and then at some point turn them loose on getting cost estimates, and then coming back, I'm afraid we're gonna be really pinched for time. So I think it makes more sense to have them start doing that work now, okay? We can then have a meeting, and within our first meeting, we'll have the list of what, and we can, I mean, if we can easily say, hey, look, we don't, these, like I said, 10 projects, we don't want those. Okay, then we've already taken the step of narrowing the list of, in scope of potential projects that might entail, from an efficiency standpoint, and given the timeliness, I think that's, I think that's gonna be what is gonna be the most efficient way to proceed, in my opinion.
So how will they be able to go out and revisit pricing on $160 million of projects without the level of quick count?
They have a list that changes almost daily with pricing, so it's not really that hard for them to come up with what the current pricing on materials are. They change that every time the economy changes, anything changes. You know, it's it's, they're people at places like where I worked at, that's what they do.
Oh, yeah, I would look like a pricing analyst and.
Right. And they're not charging us because they're still on
So you're
board.
saying they're just gonna go into the model and whatever column is assigned to fuel, they'll adjust the fuel price?
Oh, they
up?
certainly can do that.
Yeah.
They certainly.
So that's the scope of what we are seeking?
I think that's how you get the pricing. The scope, I think, I agree with you. I think we need to say what's important to us, because there's some things in there that a bunch of us had our heart and soul into, and we really feel is important. So I think that's gotta be part of it. And then, the rest of it, okay, what else can we do within the confines of the amount of money that we wanna spend? Tell us what that looks like for us in the new pricing right now. And then it goes back in our hands to decide if we're gonna do it.
So one of the other things you mentioned, and I'll let other people ask some questions, was the feedback from the community. Did the survey that we received, the survey results we received, did they ever get communicated and shared with the community?
The feedback, you mean?
The survey results that the administration shared with us, that was for the board.
The post-election or which surveys? Post-election? I'm not 100% sure.
So that's one of the pieces that I would like to discuss, is
Okay.
how do we roll that out? So I know we had this conversation today. When we talk about due diligence, it's more, projects is, you're ultimately going to do it. I would say the administration's role in projects is the menu. Here's the menu. Here's the accurate information for you all to make that decision. But there's legal work. There are things from our financial analysts that they have to do. There's a number of things that you would have to kind of give us a green light, things that we will.
What legal work, Dr. Allah, just
So the biggest legal work that's going to be done is preparing a potential ballot language, putting all that together, making sure that everything lines up for you to be able to vote in August. So that's the big legal part of it. But the ballot's the most important thing.
And do we anticipate the ballot language to change substantially from what was presented in the May election? Other than the dollar amount?
I think it will be different because you're not doing an increase depending on what you all decide here, but it will look different. But there are things that are boilerplate that are in it, but it will definitely vary. But that's one piece of it. Maybe that takes a day.
You're an
But
attorney,
we'll
so
see.
you think it's
But we'll see multiple drafts of it, and,
I mean, I wouldn't,
Yeah.
I don't know
But-
how long it takes for them to draft it,
but that's one of the
What do
pieces
you
of
mean,
due
from
diligence.
an attorney's perspective, how extensive is that?
I can't imagine it probably would take more than a day.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, I'm just, but that's just one, that's just
Absolutely,
one
but
piece
it's
of
one
the
of the
puzzle.
things that has to be
I'm just
done
trying
before you get to
understand,
August.
like, when we
But
talk about.
Legal,
giving-
you're gonna choose projects. Our job is to make sure that the projects you're choosing have the right dollar figures, so that all adds up to whatever the number is. That's the legwork that Dave Jones will do as our CFO. That's big work that he does. So he'll line that up, and then when you all meet, you're gonna have a list, and you're gonna have the best dollars possible. The menu is our responsibility. So that's the due diligence that we'll do. Whenever you all wanna meet, those things will be ready for you.
Well,
The survey, you were gonna talk about the survey.
The survey, yeah, and that's one of the conversations. I think that's a different conversation. If you're going, I'd like to have that conversation with you all about how we share that information.
Yeah, and the other thing, and while I'm thinking of talking about, getting back to the due diligence as well, one of the things that was on the bond in May was the projected costs to do a reconfiguration of the Mulby Horning parking lots, the addition of the exit road. And at the time, consistent with what we had done in the previous bond, in previous projects, is that rather than having a design, traffic engineer do an actual conceptual design, we had them give us just a cost estimate, and that's what we did in the last bond. And then, once it got approved, then engage the traffic engineer to do the more detailed engineering drawings. One of the criticisms that came out of the survey results from the post-bond was that with regard to, for example, that item, that it lacked specificity, that there wasn't enough information, that a voter could look at it and say, well, this is really going to be what is going to be incorporated into a redesign, a reconstruction, and is it going to work? And so one of the things that the executive committee, and I can't remember if we talked about in the finance committee, but I know in the executive committee, we had some preliminary traffic engineering work done a couple of years ago when we were looking at that. And that was before That was when the road commission said they were not going to allow a new road directly on the Brighton Road. And so when that happened, they basically, the analysis by the traffic engineer came to a halt. So they already had done a fair amount of investigatory preliminary work. At this point, if we are going to go back out, I mean, that is certainly one of what I believe to be an important project from a safety standpoint. And so the executive committee asked the administration to get some quotes from traffic engineering firms of looking at and putting together a conceptual design of what that would look like. So that, and what the cost would be with that conceptual design. So that if we decided to include that in a bond proposal, or even if we didn't include it in the bond proposal. I mean, I think it's an important enough project that even if it doesn't get included in a bond proposal, it's something, depending on the cost, that we should look at as a district. And the only way we're gonna know that is if we get the conceptual design from a traffic engineering firm. So the administration did get 3 proposals, the cheapest of which was $8,200, is that right? And Dr. Allah has the different quotes. And it's from Fishback, who is the engineering firm that did the preliminary, traffic counts and the initial work before. I would like to, and this is something the board would have to authorize, but I would like to have the board authorize the administration to engage Fishback for $8,200 to put together the conceptual design of what that would look like and what the approximate cost would be. And then, that can obviously be part of our conversation of whether that would end up going onto a bond, or if not, something that we might consider down the road and through our budgeting process, try to set aside funds in our capital account. So that's another example of due diligence, Andy, that I would point out.
So you mentioned the feedback, it was a theme in the feedback regarding the survey and the feedback. As a board, are we ultimately who informs the administration to share the feedback, the survey feedback with the public, or is that something the administration can do on their own? I do think there would be value in sharing that feedback with the public. And related to your comment, how many people, was that like a one-off comment? I'm, by the way, supportive of doing what you described. I think that particular area, my own children have,
And if we've all had children go through that area, we've all.
I do support, looking into that particular issue, but I also feel strongly that we owe the public, like, transparency on the survey feedback
Sure.
solicited and received. And to the comment on, it was a theme in the feedback, was it a person or was it you feel a large percentage of the respondents?
I don't recall specifically, and some of the feedback I've gotten wasn't necessarily from that survey. Like, I mean, I've talked to people. Yeah, conversations with people in the community, trying to find out, people's thoughts on why they voted, why they did, or concerns that they had, or what they may have heard from other people that didn't support them. So it's a combination of, all of those that really drive why I think that this is an important thing for us to do, in my opinion. So, anybody else want to? Well, we all should, I think we should hear from everybody.
I just have a question. On the qualified versus state qualified, what is the bond rate for a qualified and the bond rate for a non-qualified?
So the district is single A qualified with Standard & Poor's, and the state is double A, so we are one step lower than the state when it comes to a bond rating.
What does that translate in terms of
You would have to get that
cost?
from Baker Tilly, because again, those are interest rates, those are market, those are constantly changing, but we could get that from Baker Tilly.
From our previous, it's not precise, but the difference was minuscule, and there's other savings with non-qualified bonds that could easily make up the difference.
I just was looking at what the actual difference was versus just assuming, I know, so.
I was going to be the sacrificial lamb, but I'll start now. You did a good job overviewing everything. I just wanted to share my perspective on the bond. I think many of us felt a lot of oscillation. I wasn't sure what to do, what the best answer was. But when I looked at the facts, I kept going back to, if we go out this November 26, we have more money to work with to combat the needs of our district. If we wait until November of 27, we have less dollars to work with the same zero millage rate. And then in 28, you're delaying the projects out so far. Costs, I mean, if you look at the 2012 bond and you compare that to the consumer price index inflation, to now, it was, what was it, 88 million in 2012. That same bond would be 126 million today, 14 years later. So if you extrapolate that and you think about, okay, by 28, yes, it's only 2 years, but by the time you sell your bond and you start with the projects, you're getting kicked out so far, prices are going to increase. So to me, the best option seems like going out this November for zero mills and figuring out the projects. I think sticking with safety, space, and infrastructure makes the most sense. Those are the needs of our district, and that's where we should focus our efforts.
I also think we should be going out in November 26th. I think waiting, even November 27, it's not certain if we would have to pay for some of it because every municipality may not have something on the ballot. So if we don't want to pay anything, it would be waiting until November of 28. And that's, as Katie was saying, that's going to be a long time to wait. So November 26 is coming up quickly, I know, but I think we can do this. We don't have to pay anything additional to be on the ballots. So that would be important to do that. The other thing is the state of Michigan has set it up so that the funding, school aid fund is not intended to cover all of the capital costs of the district. So we need to employ these bonds. And I think if we can do this, we're keeping this minimal, no increase, minimal cost to the public is the way to do it. Whatever we can get, I think, we can keep this at around 90 million, whatever that is. I think that would be really a responsible way to do this. No change, but yet we're going to be starting the project sooner rather than waiting because the projects are only going to get more and more expensive as we wait. So I'm going to support the bond in November 26th.
I'll go next. I agree with you. I think steady state is important. My concern about delaying to potentially 28, if we wanted to do another regular election cycle, is that we may be in a position where we actually have to ask for an increase in order to cover the needs of the district. And I think historically, Brighton has done a very good job of being responsible financially and continuing to meet the needs, but without asking for huge spikes up. And when you look at other districts, when they get into financial trouble, that's what happens. And you end up having to raise the rate. So I would be in support of going out in November. I echo your sentiments about the pros and cons of everything, but I would support it. I'm also in favor of doing the traffic study. I think that's really important. I have heard additionally about concerns of voters not knowing what that would look like. Are we moving fields? Are we not moving fields? What's the total cost going to be? What's the time savings going to be for me? Is it really worth the dollar amount? And if we're going to spend money on that, I want to make sure that there's a return on that for families, not just for safety, but time-wise too, and that we're not spending a lot of other money by shifting all of the fields to another location. So I just think it's important that we know entirely what we're getting into. And the last thing I wanted to mention is I understand Facilities Committee is also simultaneously looking at our capital dollars and what we have and what we can be spending now to solve some of the projects that, have floated back and forth between these two lists. But I would appreciate getting those estimates and working on those regardless of what's happening with the bond for 26. So.
Mr. Bain.
I have gone back and forth on this a lot, and since we don't have to make a final decision today, I think I'm comfortable with at least moving forward with the planning. But one of the things that I really feel strongly about is that even if we don't do a state qualified, that we fill out the paperwork and provide that information, at least in our board packet, so it's available to the public if they want to know what the breakdown of the costs are, as it would be as if we did a state qualified.
That's an interesting question you have there, and I don't believe that any of that information is hidden because of a qualification or not. I think we still put that out on the page and they see everything we're gonna spend. The problem is, I don't know where the negative connotation came from that, but to be able to do it without the state is actually kind of a badge of honor. It means that we've done a really good job with our money in the past, all previous boards since the redistricting, if you will. Probably the biggest thing that it does is it allows you do not have to go for prevailing wage, which can let smaller companies get in on the jobs.
Yep.
I think that's a very positive thing.
Very well aware of all of that.
Okay.
The problem is I went back through every one of our board packets, and not one included a list of the projects and the costs. And we did not provide that to the public. And for me to vote yes on going for a bond, I need that transparency from us. I don't believe we intentionally hid anything, but I don't want to go back. I don't want anyone from the public even questioning our transparency. I want all of that information out there.
Well, I don't think it's a big ask. I think it's.
We did not do it last time.
Well, we did, it was all on the website.
It was not.
all
I
the
went back,
breakdown.
I went back and looked at every board packet. We did not do.
No, not a board packet. I'm talking about the website.
It was not there.
the-
The list was, but not the cost.
Okay, let me finish, okay? It wasn't in the format of what would, the format that is required for the qualification application to the Department Treasury. I grant you that, and I have no problem just having that same format be completed and put on the website, put in the board packet. I have no problem with that. I don't agree with you that there was a lack of transparency, but having said that, I have no problem having that information because, I mean, it's out there. It's going to be treated no differently from a legal standpoint than it would be if it was a qualified bond.
It was, and it was subject to FOIA, but nobody, to my knowledge, as much as I kept telling everyone, I said FOIA it if you want it. Nobody did, so it wasn't completely hidden, but it also was not out there. And every time I asked, it was, well, clerk said we shouldn't put it out there. That's not okay with me. Putting it out there is important to me with all of the costs.
All right, well, if I could finish. I'm in favor of doing this in 26. I think we owe it. We didn't put a list of things together because we just wanted to have stuff. A lot of that stuff was very important, security-wise, educational-wise, et cetera. I think the way we handle our funds is unique, not all onto its own, but we do an awful lot with the money that we get from the state. We take care of an awful lot of community items as well, and I don't think we get credit for that. This district has done an amazing amount of things for not outside of the realm of just teaching kids, but also teaching the rest of our community, taking care of the rest of our community, and offering them things they wouldn't have otherwise. It's a unique thing in Livingston County that, you know, our municipalities do not do that, and it's on the school, but it's the way it was done, and I'm proud of the way that we take care of that money. I think there's a good portion of that bond that was necessary, not just fluff. There were things on there that would change the way we do things to the better, but I understand, we've heard from the community, and it was a bit much for them to chew off right now. So I think if we can do it without raising the cost of the taxes, I think, and getting that list down to just the necessities that we need, and making sure that we're taking care of the kids the same way we do today, I think we've got a good chance of explaining everything to them. And I would say that I would be in favor of this with the exception added that let's make sure it's out there on our page so that they can see the numbers. I don't have any reason to hide any of that. So that's my opinion.
Can I just follow up? When we get the costs that are updated and we go back to make the decisions, can we make sure that that is included on the website in our board packet?
What, I'm sorry, what do you want in the board packet?
The updated cost estimates.
For what we actually vote to approve, or just when we're having?
Whatever we get that we're gonna sit here and look at,
Yes.
because a lot of times it's been handed out to us at the board table. Can we make sure it's in the board packet so that it is online?
If we have it, sometimes we don't even have the information in time to have it in the packet with regard to, as we're getting the cost estimates. For sure, when we have a final number that we're going to be voting on, that will absolutely be in the packet. But yeah, I mean, if we have the estimates of all of the items at the time that we're going to have a meeting, then sure. I mean, I don't have a problem putting it in the packet.
I have a question on that. I believe when we did, I'm gonna call it the 2012 bond, I can't remember the exact dates. I think we had a ticker on the front page that you could open up to see where we were at and what we were doing. Is there any reason we can't do that? I mean, it's a chore for our accountant, whoever's doing it at that time, but just whenever we get something new, click it and it would go over there. You could open that thing up and see where we were and what we were thinking just about any time. I don't know how we failed to do that this last time, maybe we just didn't think about it, but I agree. Every time we get something, throw it in that box, they can open it up on that website and see it. I have no problem with that.
So just to share my thoughts, and I don't know that this will be a surprise to anyone on the board, I'm personally not in favor of going out in November. I did take a call and had a really good conversation with one of our fellow board members, and I won't name her publicly, but had a very, very good conversation with her. She was asking for my input, which I appreciated. And I mentioned the following, I feel very strongly that the scope of what ultimately was presented during the May election became extremely bloated. I think we as a board and when it comes to what was presented to voters, there was, using the term Ken used a minute ago, there was an enormous amount of fluff. When we start now reflecting back and saying, how do we identify what's a necessity versus what's fluff, I think it really exposes the reality of what was initially presented during the May election to voters. And I think the voters realized that there was very real fluff that was presented to them to vote on to ultimately secure $160 million of funds. I also feel that we continue to reference the fact that we'll keep the millage rate flat, and the millage, the rates are going to go down over a period of time, and that if we pass this bond, the amount of taxes that families are paying will be quote-unquote flat. But I think it really, again, highlights the reality of a government entity like a public school or any government entity where once we start to receive revenue from taxpayers, it's really, really hard for any government entity to start cutting and reducing the dollars that they're receiving. And I feel that here in Livingston County and here in Brighton in particular, a very meaningful part of our voting population in this community wants to see us reduce their taxes in a meaningful way and not keep their taxes flat. And so if we ultimately go out to the public this fall, I feel that our board composition's changing. We have a very meaningful election that's coming up in just a few months where 3 seats will ultimately be voted on by the public. In January, a new board will be seated. And to me, if there's anything that we should have learned from the first process going into the May election, it's that we should have really, truly spent more time discussing publicly, exercising more transparency around what do we believe is a necessity and what is truly fluff, and instill confidence in the community that we all are aligned on what is a necessity versus what may be fluff. And I know when we first started, the very early conversations we had 2 years ago about this most recent May election, we started, and I was at home, I looked through all the material, and we were in the $40 to $50 million range. That's where this started, 40 to 50 million. And it grew to 160, and now we're kind of socializing 90. And so I think we owe it to the public to let them vote in the November election on new members for this board, seat a new board in the beginning of the calendar year, take the time to thoughtfully approach what is a necessity, build confidence in the community that the necessities that the board is unanimously in support of should be funded by the public, run a very meaningful campaign to educate the public on those necessities, and then ultimately ask the voters to approve a substantially less amount that really addresses necessities versus things that are not necessities. So that's my position on this.
So one of the things I'd like to follow up with this is, I was first elected to the board in November of 18, and first term I started in January of 19. One of the things the previous board did prior to my being seated on the board, a couple of you who did this, was you had already made the decision about the bond. The new board members, there was 2 of us that came on that were new. We did not have to make the decision. That was really helpful for us, because coming in as a new board member, how long will it take you to get acclimated and to think about what you need for a bond? I'm not running again, so there'll be at least one new person. It's hard for that person to come in and make that decision, so that's gonna be a long time, that's gonna be some more time it's gonna take. And that'll be it's just pushing the ball down the road, we just keep doing it, we keep doing it, we keep doing it. By making the decision now, all of us now have had at least a year of experience on the board. We kind of know what this is like. I think this is a good reason to do it prior to getting this new board in.
I have a question for you, Andy, too. When you said 40 to 50 million, did you go through the previous projects that we had listed to come up with that number, or how are you settling on that?
Absolutely. We spent an enormous amount of time as a board having conversations. Because you sit on the facility committee meeting with me, a huge source of my frustration. I've shared this with you in committee and publicly at this table. We've given endless amounts of information. We've asked the public to provide endless amounts of feedback. We've created lists. We've had meetings like this, workshops, years ago, where we've gone through and said, these are the projects that are important to us. You all remember, I think, last meeting or the meeting prior, I shared my frustration about security, right? There's a reason for that. If you go back and look at the videos of the meetings, where I had asked Dr. Outlaw multiple times in regular board meetings, not just workshops, about district security, I was reassured multiple times that he felt strongly and the administration felt strongly, and the board, by the way, felt strongly that we had done everything we possibly could to provide the most secure campus across our district. And so it was alarming to me when we went into this most recent cycle in May. And one example that comes to mind very quickly is, I shared this with the board member who was publicly advocating this, that we somehow need taxpayer dollars to invest in secure spaces for students who have a disability or a handicap. And the board member told me, and they're sitting at this table tonight, that they received approval from the parent to publicly use their child as to hold them up and say, we as a board are asking for you, the public, to vote for this bond because this child, this handicapped child, needs a safer space to live and work and be a part of Brighton area schools. And when I saw that, I had people approaching me saying, what is this? It gave me a very sick feeling in my stomach that was how we were presenting this to the public. So I'm just giving you a real example and articulating why I have the feelings that I have about this.
But going forward, so that number, the 40 to 50, did you look at the projects and accumulate what you thought was important to get to that number?
Of course we did.
So that's something I'd be curious later, having a discussion with you about.
Be happy to. And I would also mention that the very, very small list of projects that you and I and Ken and others have reviewed, the whole board, related to facilities and CapEx, we've reviewed that dozens of times. And yet we sit here tonight and those dollars still sit in our capital budget. And I've advocated at this board table to make meaningful investments in very important, necessary improvements, CapEx improvements for this district. And to date, maybe tonight it's different, but in the most recent meeting we had, including the facility committee meeting, there was pushback in that regard. So I'm answering your question and would be happy to meet with you offline if you wanted to dive into some of that.
So I just want to follow up to provide some clarification, because I think there's some really important information that's been taken out of context in your latest statement, Andy.
Okay.
We did have a third party do a comprehensive review of our security
Yeah.
systems.
Came in with the glass and the different
And
tints on the
and
glass.
they said that we had one of the most impressive security systems district-wide of anyone that they had looked at in the state. What they did say, though, was even though they felt we were at that gold standard, if you will, is that there were a couple of things that we could do to enhance the safety and security of our buildings, one of which was the vestibules, right? We've got these very old elementary schools that are, whatever, 70, 80 years old, that didn't have vestibules built back then to account for what is considered to be the appropriate best practices for safety. So that was identified, not as a deficiency, but as a way to improve the safety and security of our district.
I'm in agreement with you.
Lockout was another one. So while we put together an initial proposal of what we were looking at, what we thought were important, this is a fluid process. And part of that fluidity was getting that type of feedback and saying, okay, now we've got further feedback from these security experts for things that they've identified, not that necessarily compromise, the safety immediately of our students, but things that we can do better. And if you want, as a district, to say you did everything you can to make sure that you have appropriate safety and security, this is something that we would suggest. And from that, those then were born into what the growing list of the bond projects. Let me finish. So to sit here and make a suggestion that we were somehow disingenuous to the public about the status of our safety and security, and yet then now we're just trying to pile on fluff things that really aren't important because we were already at a standard of safety and security that was a gold standard, that's not accurate. And so we need to be very transparent and clear to the public as we go through this, that this is an evolving process. We as and not just this board, but previous boards, we've always made safety and security a #1 priority. We were one of the first districts that put armed security officers in every building in our district. We're always pushing the envelope to do what we can. And when we got that feedback from the security consultant of what we can do better, not that we were doing anything wrong, but what we could do better, we as a board felt that we needed to seize on that opportunity. And I stand by that in including that in the growing list that we've added to the public. So I think it's very important that anyone that's watching this video understand what really transpired and the evolution of that information.
Okay, so I don't disagree with the sentiment on safety. I was here with you when the third-party consultants came in. Regarding what you just referenced in the secure vestibules and lockout, I attended the last facility committee meeting, and we looked at that very item. It's literally on the top list of priorities for the facilities committee. We all agreed it was important. You're now advocating and saying it is important and was important from both the community and from the board. I would like to make a formal motion right now that we as a board authorize the district to use the CapEx that we have to fund those safety improvements that you just mentioned.
I don't even know if we have enough money in that account
We do. It's a line item.
For
in
the
our
vestibules?
facilities committee.
But
It's a
we
line
needed to
item in
get,
effort.
we needed to get quotes.
Yeah, we don't even have
So
quotes.
what's the status? Do we have quotes?
I have no idea.
Do we?
The vestibules is much more expensive than what's in the capital improvement fund. There's
We
no
have
way.
quotes.
But we would have what we had from from the previous bond, we would have what those items
In
cost.
May.
In May, correct.
So we have quotes.
Well, the quotes would come later. These are estimates. We have estimates
The
that we
question- I
have.
didn't ask the question. The question was, do we have quotes? Do we have quotes?
We have estimates. No, we do not. If the bond passed, that's when you would get quotes.
Okay.
Andy, the uniqueness about the buildings that still don't have those is it requires quite a bit of construction to get them, because the problem is the vicinity that they're in. You remember the talks on that. We've got to move that building forward for that. Anytime you create a situation like that, it's going to be more than $3 or $4 million.
Are there buildings where we could install vestibules, secure vestibules that would not require extensive renovations?
I think the only two we have are the two that are identical.
Spencer and Horning were the only two in the bond
So
package.
if you think of Spencer or Horning, we've all been to
Yeah.
those schools. You're of the belief that it will take millions of dollars?
Just The only, you gotta break earth to do it. You've gotta, you can have to, it always touches everything. You're still gonna have HVAC, you're still gonna have electrical, you're still gonna have fire suppression, anytime you do that kind of work, because you're essentially making the building bigger. Square footage always plays into it. Maybe we don't have to get a new fire system, but maybe we do if we add that amount. I don't remember it was all in the estimates on for our bond. I'd have to look back at it again. But I know it was a lot more than $3 or $4 million. It was something, would it be right to say it was somewhere around 8 to 10
Total.
for that section? Yeah. There was some extra stuff in there.
Put in secure vestibules at 2 elementary schools is what we're
Plus the lockout.
suggesting.
It's,
Plus the
yeah,
lockout.
unfortunately, you touch,
think
anytime you add to the building and you add square footage, it's an equation, but sometimes you have to add more fire suppression, sometimes you don't, sometimes you're just extending it. Those things get expensive when I put, and I don't remember the exacts about it. But that was the pricing, we had it. It also included, now here, it included, since we were doing it, space for specials, because they needed more space. It was supposed to also help in both buildings because of the media centers, how they're being stuffed with stuff. It gave us some space in there. So back out some of that, and I'd have to see what those numbers are.
Multi-purpose room.
The idea was we have to get make the corridor separate.
I would
from
like to
the
go on the
vestibule.
record and say it's my belief that we could provide secure vestibules to the 2 buildings for the CapEx that we have available in our capital fund. And I'd love to have the district get quotes and
Yeah,
come back to us
let's do
and
that.
say, not possible, it's 10 million.
No, I agree.
I strongly believe, you live in the same world we live in, Kevin, like, it won't cost us 10 million. Like, could you have gold-plated doors and have, yeah, you can make it 10 million if you want, but if we're in the spirit of trying to provide safe and secure vestibules
Yeah.
for 2 elementary schools, we can achieve that with the money we have in our capital.
Well, you don't know that. I mean, we just don't know that.
Yeah, let's look into it.
So let's.
Let's look into it, for sure.
At
Is
the,
anyone opposed to not getting quotes, not having the administration get quotes for this?
we'll do it with the committee.
Fine with getting quotes, but I also would like to add that, we talked about this too, there still needs to be an emphasis on items that if it's going to close a school and prevent children from attending, we need to get those fixed too. So like the well, the boilers,
So have
Boiler,
we got
well,
quotes,
there's
have we
other
got
things
quotes
on
on
the
those items?
that was on the list from the facilities.
It was from the month ago, so do we have quotes for
Sorry,
those
you-
I
items?
know it was a month ago.
We'll get that in the next meeting. I don't remember whether we gave them the order to get us
We-
quotes on, so
we
we were
did,
kind of
we
in.
did, we did.
Yeah, but then that was, between then and there, it was the bond and what all happened, so it all got kind of dropped. So I give you my promise at the next meeting that's coming up, we'll make sure we get on that. It needs to be done. We need the information before we can say, yes, it can be done. So let's do it.
So can we-
We've got the matter, they can do that for us, so.
So, Mr. Urbane.
I have no problem getting the quotes. The one thing I would say is if we could hold off until the next state fiscal year of October 1, new round of grants come out, and the secure vestibule and the lockouts would squarely fall into that for us applying for grants for those
Perfect.
things.
So let's not hold back.
No, let's get the price.
Let's get the pricing, let's have discussions, let's get it for future action, monthly meetings. Great suggestion.
Just be careful, you're talking about 31AA, correct?
I am not. I am talking about the competitive grants, not the 31 double. The 31 AA is on a per-student basis. They are competitive grants that the state police have out there that these things squarely fall into.
Perfect.
And are those grants, will they be approved as part of the overall?
They will.
The state budget?
Yes, we will know when they approve the state budget what kind of money is there, but the applications for the grants won't open until
October 1st?
until the fiscal year starts.
In previous years, those were not, they're not all accepted. So I know in the past, we've submitted applications and
I'm just
not
saying-
received them, but I know we could
Right.
do it, but it doesn't mean that we're getting it just by applying.
Right, but I want to at least take an opportunity to try to get money for it.
Do you know roughly how much a district would get through a grant?
I mean, there are different grants, but there's a basic one that's 50,000, but then there's others for larger infrastructure too, so.
So, all right, so we'll get the, and so do we have a consensus to move forward with the Fishback engineering analysis for $8,200?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, got that?
Quick question on that, do we,
I can make a motion to approve the proposal from Fishbeck. Yeah. Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't expect anyone to second it, but if there is someone that seconds it, that'd be amazing.
For the Fishbeck study?
No, for the secure vestibules.
Oh, I-
Wait, give us the verbiage, say it again.
I said I would like to make a formal motion to authorize the district to get quotes and come back to the board with a recommendation to install secure vestibules.
I second that.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. To just get quotes on vestibules, nothing else that was discussed as part of the,
And we would come back once those quotes and vote whether we wanted to do that or not.
Discuss that in the larger scope of the remaining projects on the list. Sure.
okay, any further discussion?
Can I just ask one thing? Could be specific on which buildings we want to get those at? Or do you want all?
Let me piggyback off my friend Mr. Myers. The district went to the public and asked the public to give $160 million to improve security at district buildings. Through this discussion tonight, it sounds like, and I'm not putting words in anyone's mouth, that there's 2 elementary schools the board collectively feels are critically important. It's my understanding it's those 2 elementary schools that the administration would want to make these changes to.
That's correct.
And I understand.
Corning and Spencer, that's it.
Thank you. We're gonna miss you.
All right, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. And just for the, I'll just make a motion to approve authorize the district to go forward with the Fishbeck contract for $8,200.
I second that.
Second, but I have a question. We were also looking at parking reconfiguration at Spencer in Hilton, if I remember. Do we want, I mean, if we're going to go out and get traffic studies, do we want it at both of those too?
Well, here's the problem. The problem is that we don't have any preliminary traffic data, I don't think, at those schools. Fishbeck did a preliminary, they went out and took traffic counts, they observed traffic circulation at Horning and Maltby, because we were trying to lobby back then, the road commission to allow that drive. So they already have a very preliminary, extensive set of data points that doesn't have to be, go out and measured again. And so they can go forward with a design based upon that setup, which is why it's $8,200. If we're gonna go forward with something like that, like for the other schools, any of these engineering firms, they're gonna want to be able to take traffic counts, observe circulation at the
Okay,
key
so-
points, which we won't be able to do this summer, because.
So we want to wait until we make a decision, at least wait until we make a decision whether they'll be included or
Yeah,
not,
because-
before we spend money.
Right, because they'll have to, they'll have to observe it while they're in school, right? When their parents are, dropping off, picking up, and we've already got that information for Horning and Maltby, so. Anyway, okay, so I made the motion, I don't remember who seconded it. Storm? All right, all those, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. All right, that concludes the work session items for this evening. Our next regular meeting is,
Did we decide on going forward, or are we trying to decide if we're moving forward?
I thought,
Did we,
well, I think, it was really just the consensus. I mean, we don't have to take a vote for them to go forward,
so
but
then give,
I think it sounds like Andy is the only one that is not in favor of going
I
forward.
just want to make sure that it's clear that this is what.
Sure, yeah. Is that, I don't want to, just from the comments, it seemed like it was, everyone, except Andy, wanted to go forward. So, yeah, I mean, we're not making any decisions, we're just authorizing the district to move forward to begin that due diligence process, so. All right. That concludes everything on our agenda, and our next regular meeting is July 13 at 7 o'clock.
One question for you. I'll make it quick. The status of the Brighton parking lot, and I ask because it's related to a community member who has a physical handicap.
We're still working on it because when we went to the state to float the project by them, they told us that we had to provide access to everybody. We couldn't make it restricted, so we have to continue to look at this to see how we're going to do it.